HOA Karen. Set up wedding tables in my driveway, so I hosted a car wash event part 1. The chairs arrive before the chaos. It all started with a chair. Just one, sitting in the middle of my backyard, like a lost extra from a rom-com no one asked for. At first, I thought maybe a kid from next door had tossed it over the fence as a prank. But then, I walked around the corner and froze. There weren't just chairs. There were rows, perfect, straight-lined rows of white chairs, tied with pink ribbons, all facing a makeshift altar built from my lawn furniture and what looked like a bedsheet draped across my garden arch. I stood there, mouth half open, iced tea sweating in my hand, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then my eyes locked on a sign at the front, looped gold cursive glittering in the sun. Rehearsal today, love tomorrow. That's when my brain broke. Someone, without asking, without texting, without even slipping a note under my doormat, had decided to hold a wedding rehearsal in my yard. And that someone was Karen. HOA board chair, queen of bylaws, full-time menace in pastel. Let me back up. I live in a peaceful little cul-de-sac, the kind where neighbors wave, dogs sniff each other awkwardly, and mailboxes have to match or else. Unfortunately, it also comes with an HOA that thinks it's the United Nations. Most board members are harmless, retired, bored, obsessed with grass height. But Karen walks around with a clipboard like she's writing people citations for existing. And that day, she decided my backyard was the perfect place for her daughter's wedding rehearsal. I had just gotten home from work, dropped my keys, poured some tea, looked outside, and saw what can only be described as a Pinterest board hijacked my property. At first, I thought, maybe it's a prank. Maybe a flash mob. Maybe TikTok is doing something weird again. But then I saw her. Blonde bob, Bluetooth headset, shirt that said Bride Squad in sequins, barking orders like a general in a war of floral arrangements. Behind her, teenagers were tying bows. Some middle-aged guy was plugging fairy lights into my backyard outlet. My property. I walked over slowly, confused, maybe a little terrified. She turned to me with a smile, like I was her late-arriving caterer, and said, "Oh, perfect. The chairs on the left need to move forward 2 feet. The photographer's having a lighting panic." I just blinked at her. "Who are you, and why are there 50 chairs in my backyard?" Her smile faltered. Then she squinted. "You're the homeowner?" Last time I checked. She gave a sigh like I'd just told her brunch was canceled. "I'm Karen, HOA board chair. This is the venue for my daughter's wedding rehearsal. Didn't you get the note?" "What note?" She reached into her tote, pulled out a wrinkled piece of printer paper like it was the Magna Carta, and handed it to me. "Left this on your porch 2 days ago." I unfolded it, and there it was. Not a request, not an invitation, but a full-on decree. Due to limited pavilion space, the HOA has approved use of your backyard for the rehearsal dinner of the Fields wedding this Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. Thank you for being a community-minded neighbor. I looked up at her. "You left this on my porch and assumed that meant yes?" Karen tilted her head, the way a hawk might tilt before diving on a mouse. "It's a courtesy notification. Technically, your yard is adjacent to a shared visual path, and by HOA Clause 8b, continuity access allows for reasonable event flexibility." I stared at her, stunned. "You're saying because my yard looks nice, it's now community property?" She huffed. "It's not about ownership, it's about cohesion. This reflects on the entire neighborhood." I took a breath. Calm. Focused. "Let me be very clear," I said. "You don't have permission to be here. None of these people do. Take it down, now." Karen's smile returned, colder this time. It's just one evening. We'll be out by 9. No harm done. But if you make a fuss, the board may take issue with your attitude. There it was, the threat, wrapped in fake politeness and passive aggression, HOA style. I looked around at the tangled lights, the smug teens, the altar on my rose bushes. And I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just smiled and pulled out my phone, started recording, the sign, the setup, the chaos. Karen, issuing orders like she was running a royal ball. Her smile vanished the second she saw the red recording dot. What are you doing? Oh, just documenting the unauthorized use of private property for legal reasons. And YouTube, you're being unreasonable. No, I said. You're being entitled. She glared. You're bluffing. I raised an eyebrow. Am I? Then I turned, walked back inside, and let her stew. Because if Karen thought she could hijack my driveway for her glittery dictatorship, she was in for the foamiest surprise of her life. Part 2. Bubbles, beats, and the beginning of Karen's breakdown. The morning sun barely cracked through the blinds, and I was already up, caffeinated, focused, and borderline giddy. Today wasn't just any day. It was wedding day. And it was also, thanks to my little plan, car wash day. But not just any car wash. A charity foam-fueled chaos fest, hosted right on the driveway Karen claimed as her kingdom. My phone buzzed nonstop. Local Facebook groups were sharing the event. Some of the captions, pure gold. HOA Karen's gonna lose it. Come for the soap, stay for the drama. Free puppies, free foam, wedding meltdown included. Word had spread faster than Karen's HOA fines. I peeked outside. And there she was, Karen, in a pastel blazer so aggressively pink it should have come with a warning label. She was pacing like a general on a battlefield, shouting at a teenager about lighting angles near my rose bush. I cracked open the window and called out, "Hey, remove those lights, immediately!" The poor kid froze mid-step. Karen didn't even flinch. She just waved him off and muttered something about shadow management. I smiled. The fun was just getting started. By mid-morning, the battlefield had formed. On one side, Karen's wedding tables, rigid, over-decorated, floating centerpieces swaying like they knew what was coming. On the other side, my crew. Jordan was setting up his DJ booth, beats already thumping low in the background. The animal shelter van pulled in, plastered with photos of adoptable dogs wearing sunglasses. And then a full-body dog mascot hopped out, wagging its tail, doing the worm on the sidewalk. Karen stared at it like it had crawled out of a sewer. She marched over, weaponized fake smile, locked and loaded. "Excuse me? Could you kindly move that creature elsewhere? He's scaring my guests." The dog mascot wagged harder, did a spin. I stepped out with a calm smile. "They're here for the charity car wash, right here. On my driveway. Just like you planned your wedding. On my driveway. Remember?" Her jaw clenched. "You're doing this on purpose." I didn't blink. "Nope. I'm doing this for the dogs. But if it bothers you, feel free to move your party somewhere that's not my property." Her cheeks turned the color of her blazer. She stomped back to her table setup, where things were already falling apart. The wind tangled the ribbon centerpieces. A guest accidentally knocked over a lantern. One of the buffet servers asked if she could plug into my garage outlet. Spoiler, no. And then, guests started arriving, awkwardly. Some stepped right into the foam zone, confused, immediately getting misted in the face with a bubble cannon. One groomsman slipped, landed rear first into a bucket of soap. Another tried to help him up, and ended up drenched in rinse water. I watched it all, leaning against my truck, sponge in hand, whistling to the beat of Who Let the Dogs Out, which was on loop, of course. The best part? The kids. They ran wild, chasing foam, laughing, tossing mini sponge balls at each other. One little girl screamed, "This is better than the wedding." Karen heard that. Her eye twitched. Then came the final blow. A group of bikers pulled up, big dudes, big engines. One leaned over and asked, "Hey, is this the dog wash?" I smiled. You bet. Foam included. They revved their Harleys and rolled right into line. We sprayed them down with rainbow glitter soap. The bubbles sparkled like unicorn tears. They tipped big, posed for selfies, and let kids sit on their bikes for pictures. Karen tried to ask them to leave. One biker handed her a sponge shaped like a flower and winked. She shrieked and disappeared into her house like a villain retreating from battle. By noon, the crowd had doubled. The DJ was blasting a foam remix of Here Comes the Bride. The donation bucket was overflowing, and Karen's wedding tables were now floating in a sea of suds and confusion. Some guests bailed, some joined in, and one flower girl declared the car wash way more fun than Aunt Karen's boring party. And that was just the first half of the day, because if Karen thought this was over, she hadn't seen anything yet. Part 3, the meltdown, the minivan, and the moment. Everything broke. The moment Karen reappeared, you could feel the tension shift. Her face was flushed, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the chaos like she was trying to mind control it back into order. She marched across the driveway, past the overturned centerpiece, past the foamy footprints, right up to me. I was mid-sponge swipe on a minivan. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask nicely. She just snapped, "Shut this down, now." I didn't even flinch. "Karen, this is my property. And this car wash? It's 100% legal, charity approved, HOA compliant." She hissed, "You're ruining my daughter's wedding." I glanced around, at the soaked groomsmen trying to rescue a floating bouquet, at the bride, now barefoot, holding a soggy veil in one hand and a corn dog in the other, at the kid using a foam noodle as a lightsaber. Then I smiled. "No, Karen, you ruined it. I just added music and bubbles." Her voice cracked. "I'll call the police." "Please do," I said calmly. "They'll love seeing your trespassing buffet on my HOA-certified driveway." And, as if on cue, a golden retriever puppy trotted over and started licking frosting off the wedding cake stand. Karen screamed, loud enough that neighbors 3 houses down poked their heads out, loud enough that someone, bless their soul, started filming. Guests froze. The DJ cut the music. A plastic plate flew through the air and landed in a bucket of soap. And then, the unthinkable happened. One of the groomsmen, trying to back his car out, hit a puddle of foam, slipped, and fell backwards into the punch bowl. Splash. Red punch. Everywhere. Tablecloths ruined, guests gasping. A chair toppled like it had been shot. And me? I just kept scrubbing the minivan's tire like nothing happened, because this was justice, public, poetic, soaked in suds. Then came the cherry on top. A biker revved his Harley, threw glittery foam into the air, and shouted, "This is the best wedding I've ever crashed." People cheered. The DJ turned the volume back up. Kids chanted, "Bubble fight." And somewhere in the distance, a volunteer from the animal shelter released a foam cannon blast skyward like a victory flare. Karen broke. She kicked over a folding chair, slammed a sandwich to the ground, and screamed, "This neighborhood is full of lunatics." No one argued. Most people just laughed. I could see the bride whisper something to the groom, her voice cracking. He nodded, pulled out his phone, and 5 minutes later, a car rolled up and they left. Yup. The bride and groom left their own rehearsal party. They didn't even look back. Karen? She stormed inside, disappearing like a villain slamming a castle door. The car wash raged on. Music blasted. Foam flew. A kid tried to surf across the driveway on a flattened bucket lid. I handed out lemonade. Dogs got adopted. Neighbors clapped every time a table collapsed under the weight of melted decor. By late afternoon, Karen's elegant rehearsal dinner looked like the aftermath of a clumsy parade and a bubble rave. And still, I wasn't done. Because Karen, she doesn't give up. And if she thought this was bad? Part 4. Karen's comeback and the pressure washer showdown. Just when I thought the chaos had finally settled. When the last sponge had been wrung out and the DJ was packing up his cables, Karen struck again. I was sitting on my porch, drink in hand, admiring my freshly scrubbed driveway, when a moving truck rolled up outside her house. At first I thought, she's finally moving out. Finally. But no. Out came folding chairs. Out came more tables. And then, a full-size white canopy tent. Karen emerged behind them in a new outfit, a fresh layer of foundation and fury practically dripping from her French tips. She held a megaphone. "The wedding," she declared dramatically, "is back on." Under the stars, with fairy lights, and a midnight toast? Apparently, she'd decided that tonight would be her daughter's second chance at a perfect memory. Only this time, she didn't stop at my driveway. She started setting up tables on other neighbors' lawns, hung string lights across public sidewalks, even told an elderly couple to move their bird bath because it clashed with the ambiance. I just watched, sipping my soda, waiting. Because Karen wasn't just doubling down. She was going nuclear. But what she didn't know was that I had Rick, my buddy Rick, the same guy who helped me repaint my garage in a single afternoon, pulled up in his truck towing the ultimate petty weapon, a commercial-grade pressure washer. This thing wasn't for driveways, it was for removing barnacles from boats. We didn't say much, just nodded, and got to work. I started spraying down the driveway again, humming softly. The foam, the glitter, the battle residue, washed clean. Then Karen came stomping over, hair puffed, eyes wide. "You're ruining the vibe," she screeched. Rick didn't even look at her, just turned the nozzle and kept cleaning. That's when she snapped. She lunged forward, tried to grab the hose from Rick's hands, but her heel slipped. And in one glorious, slow-motion second, Karen caught a full blast of icy, high-pressure water right to the chest. She shrieked like someone had dropped a lobster down her blouse. Her blazer, sopping wet. Her makeup, running like watercolor in the rain. Her shoes, squishing like soaked sponges with every furious step. Neighbors froze. One kid whispered, "Mom, Karen's melting." And you know what? I still didn't laugh. I just turned off the sprayer and said, "Consider that a rinse cycle." She stormed back to her house, trailing puddles across the sidewalk like a soggy dictator retreating from a failed coup. By then, the guests who had trickled back for her evening round 2, gone. Quietly, embarrassed. Even the DJ she hired for the sunset reception never showed up. It was over. Karen had lost. And the best part? No yelling, no lawsuits, no cops, just a hose, some bubbles, and a whole lot of karma. But even after that, even soaked and humiliated, Karen wasn't quite done. Because when a control freak like her hits rock bottom, they don't surrender. They plot. Part 5. The Last Stand and the HOA's Final Verdict. The morning after Karen's unintentional pressure washer bath was peaceful. Birds were chirping. The air smelled like freshly cleaned concrete and a little justice. But I knew that peace wouldn't last. Because Karen, she's not the kind of person who disappears quietly. Sure enough, around 9 a.m., she emerged from her house. Not drenched, not screaming, but composed. In that dangerously calm way villains always look right before their final move. Clipboard in hand, large manila envelope under her arm, and sunglasses. The "I'm about to start trouble but in style" kind. She strutted across the street like she was walking into a courtroom, stopped at the edge of my driveway, and said, loud enough for the entire cul-de-sac to hear, "You'll be hearing from the HOA and my attorney." I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded politely and said, "Good morning to you too, Karen." She handed me a thick packet, printed, stapled, labeled, and walked off. Inside, an official-looking document titled Formal Grievance Against Neighbor for Disruption of Community Event. She was trying to flip the narrative, accuse me of ruining her unauthorized wedding mess. She'd highlighted bylaws, quoted obscure noise ordinances, even accused my DJ of emotional terrorism via Chicken Dance remix. But the kicker? She added a final page demanding reimbursement for emotional distress and wedding damages. Total, $3,420. I set the packet down slowly, then burst out laughing so hard I had to lean on the porch railing for support, because Karen, in her ultimate act of delusion, was trying to sue me for ruining the wedding she illegally hosted on my property. But fate? Oh, fate had other plans. Because just as I was finishing my coffee, the HOA president pulled into my driveway. He's an older gentleman named Mr. Callahan, cardigan, clipboard, and a face that said, "I've seen things." He stepped out, shook my hand, and said, "May I sit for a minute?" I believe it's time we talk. About Karen. We sat on my porch, and for the next 15 minutes he explained everything. Turns out, I wasn't the only one Karen had pushed too far. Her wedding disaster? It was just the final spark in a long fuse of complaints, bullying neighbors, bypassing approvals, secretly using HOA funds for decorative improvements, even trying to fine someone for planting sunflowers. "We had an emergency meeting this morning," Callahan said quietly, "and I wanted you to hear it from me first." Then he handed me a paper. "Effective immediately, Karen Lam is suspended from all HOA leadership duties. Pending formal review, she is barred from making or enforcing policy decisions. Further, a vote has been called for her removal from the board entirely." I blinked. "You're removing her?" He nodded. "Unanimous vote. Even her 2 allies voted yes. One of them actually applauded." I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I just leaned back and let the moment settle. Karen, the clipboard queen, the driveway dictator, the pastel tyrant, was finally facing the consequences. But before Mr. Callahan left, he handed me one more thing. A small white envelope, unmarked. "She dropped this off early this morning," he said. "Said it was a personal note for you." I opened it slowly. Inside was a single line, scrawled in her handwriting, in shaky cursive. "You may have won this round, but the game isn't over." No signature, no apology. Just that. I stared at it for a moment, then crumpled it and tossed it into the trash. Because at that point, there were no more games. Karen had lost her power, her wedding, her reputation. All that remained was a soggy folding chair and a raccoon still chewing on frosting in her yard. But the story? Oh, The story was far from over. Part 6. Viral Justice. And Karen Goes Global. I woke up the next morning to the sound of my phone, absolutely losing its mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz nonstop. Texts, mentions, notifications piling up like soap bubbles in a windstorm. Leo, my cousin, my tech wizard, had uploaded the footage from the wedding car wash carnival fiasco the night before. I'd forgotten he even had his drone flying that day. The title? HOA Karen crashes a wedding and gets washed away by karma. The thumbnail? Karen, mid-scream, drenched, her hair plastered to her cheeks like seaweed after a storm. I clicked play. There she was, shouting at my volunteers, yelling at a dog mascot, getting blasted with high-pressure water in glorious 1080p slow motion. The video was only 12 minutes long, but by the time I finished watching it, it already had over 74,000 views. Leo messaged me, "Bro, this thing is blowing up. You might want to read the comments." So I did. And let me tell you, the internet, it did not disappoint. This is the HOA Avengers Driveway Edition. Whoever hosted a dog charity car wash next to a stolen wedding is my new hero. Karen got baptized in karma and dish soap. Amen. There were memes, fan art of Destiny, the flamingo in battle armor. Even a remix of Karen's Scream turned into a dubstep drop titled Foamageddon. Someone dubbed her rant over footage of the Titanic sinking. And the best part? Local news picked it up. HOA dispute turns into charity event mayhem, foam, fury, and federal threats. The reporter even showed up at my door the next afternoon, asking for an interview. I said I'd do it, under one condition. They had to feature the animal shelter, too. We stood by my newly cleaned driveway, surrounded by wagging tails and half-empty soap buckets, while Destiny floated lazily in the background like a victorious war general. The segment aired that night. Karen didn't respond. She hadn't been seen outside since the meltdown. Her curtains stayed drawn, her porch light off. Neighbors walked a little lighter, smiles lingered longer. And that tense HOA watchdog feeling that used to haunt our cul-de-sac? Gone. We even started calling that Saturday the Soakening. Leo printed commemorative shirts. One neighbor turned it into a calendar photo. July now featured my truck mid-rinse, foam cannon blazing behind me like a scene from Fast and the Furious. HOA Drift. But even with the laughter and viral fame, something deeper had shifted. People started talking to each other again. Kids played chalk games on the sidewalk without fear of clipboard citations. One guy even repainted his door bright yellow. For the vibes, he said. Nobody fined him. We were free. And Karen? She may have written that cryptic little note about the game not being over. But the truth? The neighborhood had already picked a side, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't hers. Part 7. The vote that ended it all. The HOA didn't usually move fast. Meetings were once a month, slow, full of coffee breath and debates over shrub height regulations. But this time, things moved at lightning speed. Within 3 days of the soakening, the HOA president, Mr. Linwood, a retired civil engineer with a fondness for khakis and fairness, called for an emergency vote. The motion? Remove Karen from her position as board chair. Not suspend, not warn. Remove. It was the kind of thing that just a week ago would have caused neighbors to clutch their pearls in panic. But now? People were lining up to sign the petition. Even the couple Karen had fined 2 months earlier for their excessively whimsical mailbox brought cookies to the petition station. Leo printed a banner. It read, "Justice, Soap and Sanity, sign below." And people did. By the end of the day, 68% of homeowners had signed. More than enough. So that Friday evening, exactly 1 week after her foam-flavored downfall, we gathered at the clubhouse. The air was thick with quiet anticipation, and maybe just a little leftover bubble scent from my hoodie. Karen showed up late. As always. This time she wore black from head to toe, like she was mourning democracy. Her sunglasses were so large I'm pretty sure one of them had a fingerprint scanner. She sat at the front with crossed arms, refusing to look at anyone. Mr. Linwood stood and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We have one item on tonight's agenda, a motion to remove board chair Karen Lamb from her position due to repeated violations of homeowner property rights, unapproved events, and disorderly conduct." Karen didn't flinch, not even when someone coughed the word foam. He continued, "This motion is not personal, but it is necessary. The community has spoken." Then came the vote. Hands went up. 1, 2, 5, 10, every row. Even Karen's usual allies, the clipboard crew, kept their arms firmly at their sides. And just like that, it was unanimous. No shouting, no debate, just peace, descending like a soap-slicked blessing over the cul-de-sac. Karen stood up slowly, removed her sunglasses, and for the first time since I moved into this neighborhood, she looked small. "I hope you all enjoy your chaos," she muttered, voice cracking like a dropped wine glass. Then she turned, clutched her leather binder like it held what was left of her pride, and walked out without another word. No clipboard, no threats, no casserole, just silence. Mr. Linwood turned to the room and said, "We'll begin the nomination process for a new chair next week. Until then, let's enjoy our neighborhood again." And you know what? We did. As we walked out that evening, someone handed me a small sticker. It had a cartoon flamingo in sunglasses. Below it, "Don't mess with the driveway." Part 8. The letter she never meant to send 2 days after the vote, just as the neighborhood was starting to feel like itself again. A plain white envelope showed up on my doorstep. No return address, no name, just one word handwritten on the front in slanted cursive. "Sorry." At first I thought it was a prank, but when I flipped it over and saw the faint indentation of a once-crushed HOA seal on the flap, my gut told me the truth. It was from Karen. I opened it slowly, like it might explode in glitter or passive aggression. Inside was a letter. Not typed, not printed, handwritten, sloppy in parts, rushed in others, but unmistakably real. To the man with the hose, "You win. I know I was wrong, not just about the wedding. About a lot of things. The rules, the power, the way I acted like this street belonged to me. I let my pride run things, and I ruined what was supposed to be a perfect day. Not just for my daughter, but for everyone. You didn't yell. You didn't fight dirty. You just sprayed bubbles. And somehow, that did more than any argument ever could. They say you learn from your biggest humiliation. I guess this was mine. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. I'm stepping away from the board, not just because I was voted out, but because I need to figure out who I am when I'm not holding a clipboard. Also, I checked. That pressure washer? Definitely not HOA compliant. Don't worry, I'm not reporting it. That's my apology. P.S. Tell the golden retriever I'm sorry about the scream. I didn't know what to feel. There wasn't some grand crescendo. No violin music swelling in the background. Just stillness. I folded the letter, sat down, and laughed, not out of mockery but relief, because sometimes the most unexpected revenge isn't what you dish out. It's what they see in the mirror when the foam clears. Later that night, I laminated the letter and pinned it to my garage wall, right above the bucket labeled Charity Car Wash, backed by popular demand. Because who knows? Next Saturday, we might just bring the bubbles back. Part 9. Freedom Fest returns. 1 week later. The sun rose over Whispering Oaks with a strange kind of electricity in the air, the kind that says, something awesome is about to happen. And it was, because after everything, the chaos, the foam, the flying sandwich, and the $10 bill from Karen's aunt, the neighborhood wanted more. Not revenge, not drama, celebration. It started with a group chat, then a flyer, then a banner stretched between two mailboxes. Freedom Fest 2.0. 1 driveway. 0 clipboards, infinite foam. And just like that, it was on. By noon, my driveway was alive again, but this time with laughter, music, and 0 weddings. The DJ, back. Jordan brought an upgraded booth complete with a fog machine that doubled as a bubble blaster. The shelter, back, and this time, with twice the puppies. The food truck? Oh yeah, and this one had tacos. Someone brought folding chairs, but only the collapsible kind. No altars, no tablecloths, just neighbors, friends, and strangers who'd seen the video online and showed up just to say, "You're the foam guy." I was, and I wore that badge with pride. Kids splashed, bikers returned. The bride's cousin, who I later learned was also her ex-therapist, even donated handmade soaps shaped like flamingos. And yes, Destiny was there too, refilled, reinflated, wearing sunglasses and a tiny cape that said, "Rinsed," not ruined. As the day rolled on, people shared their own HOA horror stories. A woman confessed she was once fined for aggressively cheerful wind chimes. A man said he had to repaint his fence because the color intimidated passers-by. We laughed, we clinked soda cans, we danced to bubble rave remixes, and when the sun began to dip below the rooftops, painting everything gold, I stood beside my truck, hose in one hand, drink in the other, and breathed deep. There was no shouting, no clipboards, no silent wars over rose bushes, just joy. Karen never came out. Her blinds stayed drawn. Her porch stayed empty. But maybe, just maybe, she heard the music and smiled. Maybe she saw the foam drift by her mailbox like a peace offering wrapped in soap. Or maybe she was writing a new letter, one that didn't begin with "Dear Homeowner," but with something more human. Either way, it didn't matter, because the driveway was mine again, not just the concrete, but the spirit. A place where rules didn't trump kindness, where community didn't come from control, and where one hose, one bucket, and one ridiculous inflatable flamingo sparked something way bigger than any HOA fine. We called it Freedom Fest, but really, it was just home, the way it should have always been. And as the last bubbles floated into the twilight, and Destiny bobbed proudly in the breeze, I whispered, "We clean up nice." Then I aimed the hose at the sky and pulled the trigger. Epilogue. The last bubble weeks passed. The foam washed away. The wedding chairs vanished. And the HOA meetings? They got a whole lot quieter. Karen didn't resign, but she didn't return to power either. Her clipboard? Now gathering dust beside her gardening gloves. No more surprise rehearsals, no more invisible permission slips, just peace. Neighbors started waving more, kids laughed louder, and every time someone brought up the car wash incident, we all smiled. Destiny, my inflatable flamingo, now floats peacefully in the backyard pool, a silent sentinel, watching over a neighborhood that finally learned how to stand up for itself. I still keep the hose coiled, bucket ready, just in case. Because around here, no one messes with the driveway. Not anymore. And if they try, let's just say, I've got the foam and the playlist. Ready to go.